Good afternoon and welcome to the San Francisco Planning Commission and Recreation and Park Commission joint hearing for Thursday, October 15th, 2015. I'd like to remind members of the public that the Commission does not tolerate any disruption or outbursts of any kind. Please silence any mobile devices that may sound off during these proceedings. And when speaking before the Commissions, if you care to, do state your name for the record. I'd like to call roll at this time. Planning Commission President Fong.
Here.
Planning Commission Vice President Wu.
Here.
Commissioner Antonini.
Present.
Commissioner Hillis.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
And Commissioner Richards.
Here.
Commissioner Moore will be absent today.
And now for the Recreation and Park Commission, Commissioner Buell.
Here.
Commissioner Lowe.
Here.
Commissioner Bonilla. Here. Commissioner Harrison.
Here.
Commissioner McDonald.
Here.
And Commissioner Levitin does have an excused absence.
Commissioners, under your special calendar, please note that the joint commissions will hold one public hearing for the public to provide testimony on all items listed below. Following the public hearing, the Recreation and Park Commission will act jointly with the Planning Commission to consider raising the cumulative shadow limit for Gene Friend Recreation Center and adopting findings under the California Environmental Quality Act, and the Recreation and Park Commission will consider making a recommendation to the Planning Commission regarding the possible adverse impact of shadow on Gene Friend Recreation Center. Following action on those items, the Recreation and Park Commission will adjourn, and the Planning Commission will remain in session and separately consider action on all other items. Items 1A, B, C, and D for case numbers 2011.0586 K and X at 363 6th Street. Item 1A will be the discussion and possible joint action by the Planning Commission and Recreation and Park Commission to raise the cumulative shadow limit for Gene Friend Recreation Center pursuant to the jointly approved Planning Code Section 295 implementation memo adopted in 1989. This will be a Planning Commission and Recreation and Park Commission joint action. Item 1B will be the discussion and possible action by the Recreation and Park Commission to adopt a resolution to recommend to the Planning Commission that the new shadow cast on Gene Friend Recreation Center by the proposed project at 363 6th Street will not be adverse to the use of the park as required by Planning Code Section 295. This is a Recreation and Park Commission action only. Following items 1A and B, the Recreation and Park Commission will adjourn and the Planning Commission will remain in session to separately consider the following items, 1C and D, for case numbers 2011.0586 K and X, adoption of findings, and large project authorization.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Rich Sucre, Department staff. I am joined here with my supervisor, Julian Benales from the Planning Department, Erica Jackson, our Shadow Specialist from the Planning Department, and Stacy Bradley from the Recreation and Parks Department. The project before you is a large project authorization and shadow findings for the proposed project at 363 6th Street. Under the large project authorization, the project is seeking modifications to the planning code requirements for rear yard, permitted obstructions over the street, dwelling unit exposure, and off-street parking. Per Planning Code Section 295, the Planning Commission and the Recreation and Parks Commission must grant authorization to new construction projects that will cast shadow or shade upon any property under the jurisdiction of the Recreation and Parks Commission. The project will cast new shadow upon Gene Friend Recreation Center. Since Gene Friend Recreation Center possesses a shadow budget, the two commissions must take joint action to, 1, increase the shadow budget of the Gene Friend Center, and 2, adopt a motion that the additional shadow caused by the project would not be adverse to the use of the Gene Friend Recreation Center. Additional information on the shadow and its impact on Gene Friend will be provided by Stacy. The proposed project includes demolition of the existing 2-story former warehouse, which is currently used as a church, and new construction of a 9-story, 85-foot-tall residential building with 104 dwelling units, approximately 700 square feet of ground floor commercial space, 45 off-street parking spaces below grade, 102 Class 1 bicycle parking spaces, and 7 Class 2 bicycle parking spaces. The project includes a dwelling unit mix consisting of 56 two-bedroom units, 21 bedroom units, and 28 studios. The project includes common open space via a ground floor, courtyard, and a roof deck, as well as private open space for 3 dwelling units via private terraces on the ground floor. The entrance to the off-street parking is through a 10-foot wide opening along Clara Street. To date, the department has received numerous correspondences about the proposed project, both in support and opposition. Since publication of the commission packets on October 8th, I provided the additional correspondence received by the Planning Department to both commissions. The project has elected the on-site affordable housing alternative, and since the project contains 104 dwelling units, the project will provide 12 affordable units on-site, which will be available for rent. Since it is involving a rental agreement, the project sponsor has entered into a Casa-Hawkins agreement with the city. In compliance with Ordinance Number 70-15, the project sponsor reviewed the project with the Entertainment Commission on September 15, 2015. The Entertainment Commission requests that the Planning Commission adopt an additional condition of approval involving measures for noise attenuation for Chapter 116 projects. To clarify some of the information which is being represented on the project, the department notes that the ground floor retail use at the corner of 6th and Harrison Street has an 18-foot floor-to-ceiling height and meets the requirements of Planning Code Section 145. Just to note, only non-residential uses on the ground floor are required to have a minimum of 14 feet of ground floor height. Further, the floor-to-ceiling height of the average residential floor plate is 8 foot 6 inches and is compliant with both the Planning Code and Building Code. After analyzing all aspects of the project, department staff recommends approval with conditions. Specifically, the project complies with the applicable requirements of the Planning Code. The project is consistent with the objectives and policies of the general plan. The project is located in a zoning district where residential and ground floor uses are principally permitted. The project produces a new mixed-unit development with 104 dwelling units and ground floor corner retail. The project is consistent with and respects the existing neighborhood character and provides an appropriate massing and scale for a large block. And the project will fully utilize the Eastern Neighborhoods area plan controls and will pay the appropriate development impact fees. The project sponsor and the Recreation and Parks Commission staff are present and have prepared short presentations. This concludes my presentation. I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Stacy Bradley. I'm the Deputy Director of our Planning Unit at Rec and Park. I have a presentation to step you through the shadow impact on from 363 6th Street on Gene Friend Recreation Center. As you know, the Planning Code Section 295 is from the voter-approved Prop K, the Sunlight Ordinance, that the voters approved in 1984. 1987 and 1989, there were two memos that jointly approved by your two commissions that defines how the shadow impact is determined with quantitative and qualitative criteria. It also includes a definition of a solar year, which is a half-year analysis, and a solar day, which looks at the day from 1 hour after sunrise to 1 hour before sunset. It established absolute cumulative limits for 14 downtown parks, including Gene Friend Recreation Center. It was then known as south of Market Park, and the limit was set at 0%. This location map shows you the project, 363 6th Street, in relation to our two parks. Victoria, do you want me to do this one?
Do me a favor, wiggle the base of that. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Sorry, is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Much better.
Great. So you can see the map here with 363 6th Street on the east side, Victoria Manolo Drives over to the west, and Gene Friend Recreation Center to the north. The project was analyzed to see if any new shadow hit both Victoria Manolo Drives and Gene Friend Rec Center. It was found that no new shadow was on VMD, only on Gene Friend Rec, so the rest of my presentation delves into Gene Friend Rec. This is an image of what Gene Friend Recreation Center looks like now. There's a recreation center, basketball courts, a play structure, and lawn. There's entrances along Harriet Street and Folsom Street to the open space, and along 6th Street into the recreation center. The park shadow details now, it is an acre, just over an acre, and the existing shadow load is 22.94% of the total theoretical annual available sunlight on the park, on the open space of the park. It is 60.67%. There's a shadow load of 60.67% when you include the recreation center building, which is always in shadow. This image shows where a general location of where the new shadow will be. The new shadow is roughly 0.03% of the TAS. It would increase it'll increase from 22.94 to 22.97 on the open space, and 60.67 to 60.7% when the rec center building is included. Now, RPD and TPL are in Trust for Public Lands. We're in a partnership to do a feasibility study and a concept plan for this site. We're looking at redesigning the entire site. It is likely that the building will be roughly where it is now along the 6th Street corridor and probably extend all the way to Folsom Street. It will also have similar features in the open space as it does now. The recreation center may or may not have outdoor recreation space on the rooftop. This provides a summary of the shadow analysis. The new shadow would occur in the morning within 30 minutes of the solar day, so that's about 1 hour after sunrise, and will occur no later than 8:40 in the morning. This is important as the park currently it opens at 9 a.m. and closes at 6. It's open 5 days a week. Currently, it's closed on Sunday and Monday, although it is available for afternoon programming and rentals on Sunday and Monday. The new shadow will be on the park 20 days between September and March. The new shadow ranges from 1 minute to 23 minutes, and the average is 12 minutes. The largest footprint on October 25th is from 7:30 to 7:38, and it will shadow just over 6,000 square feet of the park. It's approximately 13% of the total park area. The maximum shadow cast is 802 square foot hours on 1025, and the total square foot hours of this new shadow is just over 46,000, or the 0.03%. The location of the shadow, as I mentioned, is in the southern part of the property along Folsom Street entry. Right now it has a lawn area and is south of the playground. This shows you the cumulative projects that we know in the pipeline. There's 3636 Street is highlighted in orange. Just south of that is 988 Harrison Street. It has been determined that that project will cast no new shadow on the park. Next to 3636 Street, going north on 6th Street, is 3456 Street. That was analyzed at the same time and is included in your shadow analysis. That would have also a minimal shadow of about 0.07%. These two shadows interact, so the information of these projects lays over each other, so they may cast a similar shadow. 999 Folsom Street is just north of 345 6th Street. It is estimated to have about a 1% shadow load on the park. And then 980 Folsom Street is slightly to the west along Folsom, and it is pending its shadow study, but will likely have a small shadow impact as well. Both 3456 Street and 999 Folsom Street are still under review at the Planning Department, and it's likely that the analysis will change, although unlikely that it would go up. It's more likely that the shadow impacts would be reductive in the discussions with the planning staff. This image shows the worst case scenario of 363 6th Street and also shows 345 6th Street. The purple is 363 6th Street. I'm here with planning staff, and we're available for any questions that you may have. And also the project sponsor is here as well with a presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, project sponsor.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Director Ram and Ginsburg. Alexis Pelosi with the Pelosi Law Group. On behalf of Railtex, the project sponsor, and Boris Fadiev, its president, who's here today, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present the project at 363 6th Street. For the past 2 years, Railtex has been working on this project with Planning Department staff and the community. It is a project that reflects the valuable insight provided by both those groups and a project that will bring much-needed housing to the city. Railtex was formed in 2012 by Boris and his team with a focus to build housing that is affordable by design and housing that responds to and reflects the community and the neighborhoods where it is located. Realtex has engaged with its neighbors, local businesses, nonprofits, and citywide entities to design and integrate projects that weave into the local San Francisco fabric. Cody Fenari, a Realtex team member, will be providing a summary of the project at 363 6th Street. I will then present an overview of the project's net new shadow. Cody will conclude the project sponsor's presentation with a brief summary of Realtex community outreach and the project's community benefits. Before turning it over to Cody, on behalf of Boris and the entire Realtex team, we want to thank Planning Department staff, and in particular Rich Sucre and David Winslow, who's not here today, for their professionalism, responsiveness, insight, and guidance. We also want to thank community members for working with Realtex on the 363 6th Street project, as their comments and staff's work has resulted in a better project and one that Realtex is honored to have received a favorable recommendation for approval from staff. Now here's Cody, who will walk you through the details of the project.
Good afternoon, Commission members. Cody Fernari, Executive Vice President of Realtex. I, too, would like to express my gratitude for the Planning Department's positive recommendation of the project and the hard work that they've put into this project to make it a better place to live, work, and play. As described by Mr. Sucre, 363 6th Street is located at the northeast corner of 6th and Clara Street. Can I get the present? There we go. Thank you. Our proposed project is an 85-foot-tall mixed-use residential building. We envision our project transforming this important but underutilized gateway to the downtown. Giving the site relevance to the rapid growth of Mission Bay and Eastern Soma, our proposed project provides a total of 104 luxury residential units comprised of 28 studios, 21 bedrooms, and 56 two-bedroom units, including 12 on-site inclusionary affordable units. 54% of our units are two bedrooms, far exceeding the 40% requirement. We've worked extensively with the Planning Department staff to activate the street. After meeting with the community, multiple one-on-one meetings with community leaders, we've incorporated many of the changes into the project, and it's helped us improve the pedestrian experience. The ground floor fronting 6th Street consists of active uses with 18-foot ceiling heights. These include a lobby, community room, 700-square-foot commercial space with frontages on both 6th Street and Clara Street. The community room will be available to the community members and residents of the buildings for meetings and events. We're also working to donate the commercial space to a local nonprofit as part of our contribution to the neighborhood. Working directly with David Winslow, we've designed the project's Clara Street frontage to integrate the residential feel of Clara Street. The building is set back 10 feet above the 4th floor with 3 residential units fronting Clara Street on the ground level. These units have raised entries and are set back 14 feet from the curb, creating separation from the street and privacy for the residents. Our project provides approximately 8,000 square feet of combined open space, comprised of an on-grade rear yard and a rooftop deck. Now I'd like to ask Alexis Pelosi to return and discuss the building's shadow and its relationship to the 2 parks located near the project.
Hi. I'm going to talk a little bit about shadow. I know Stacy already did a great job with an overview of it. As she noted, 363 6th Street's in close proximity to 2 parks, Victoria Manolo Draves Park and Gene Friend Recreation Center. As part of the project, Adam Noble of CADP, who is here, prepared a shadow study, and based on the analysis, it was determined that it would not have a shadow impact on Victoria Manolo, but would cast a small new shadow on Gene Friend Recreation Center. Okay, I'm not so good with the... Okay. So there you can see the 2 parks. As indicated by Stacy, Gene Friend Recreation Center is open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Tuesday through Friday, and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays. It's closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. The project will cast a new shadow on Gene Friend before the park opens. At its maximum, the project's new shadow covers 13% of the park and averages for approximately 12 minutes, and it's located in passive recreational areas. In total, the net new shadow cast by the project is 0.028% increase in the existing shadow load on the park. To help visualize the new shadow cast, the project sponsors prepared a video of the worst shadow day. The worst shadow day is the day with the greatest new shadow and the largest new shadow by area. The video is not required under Proposition K or CEQA, but it was prepared and is being provided to help visualize the duration and location of the net new shadow. So as you can see, Gene Friend is outlined in yellow, and 3636 Street is in blue. And as you can see now, the shadow's already left the park. The shadow occurs first thing in the morning, as you can see, and quickly moves off of the park. So it's off of the park by 7:55 a.m. This is a still of the worst shadow day, which Stacy also showed. And on this day, again, the shadow only covers 13% of the park at its maximum and is gone by 7:55 a.m., which is over an hour before the park opens. To get a sense of where the shadow is cast, here's a slide of the areas with the new shadow. And as you can see, the shadow is cast on passive recreational areas, such as walkways on the southeast corner of the park. Again, the new shadow is cast before Gene Friend Recreation Center opens, lasts for between 6 minutes and 23 minutes total. The latest shadow that occurs on the park is at 8:41, which is 19 minutes before the park opens, and it covers at a maximum 13% of the park. For all these reasons, and because of the limited size and duration of the shadow in relation to Gene Friend Recreation Center and its existing shadow load, we agree with staff's determination that the project shadow is not adverse, does not interfere with the use of the park, and agree with staff's recommendation to increase the ACL for Gene Friend Recreation Center by 0.028%. Now here's Cody to talk a little bit more about the project's community benefits and their community outreach.
Realtex is contributing a combined $1.8 million to the community in the form of impact fees, including $185,000 in contributions to local parks and youth programs. The project provides 12 new below-market rate affordable units. 54% of the project's units will be 2 bedrooms, and we're committed to hiring local skilled tradespeople for the building's construction. Since the inception of the project, Realtex has actively engaged the community and has met with over 25 community organizations. We're proud to be presenting more than 50 letters of support for the project from local neighbors. We've developed a strong, supportive relationship with 7 major community organizations, including Walk SF, San Francisco Bicycle Coalition, United Players, City Crossroads, Somme Art, National Federation of Filipino Americans, and the South of Market Business Association. Meeting with community leaders one-on-one has helped us understand the community's needs and has shaped our project's design. Recognizing the importance of local parks, we have formed a partnership with the San Francisco Parks Alliance to fund youth sports programs at the Gene Friend Rec Center and to sponsor a monthly movie night at Victoria Manelo Draves Park. We've supported with the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition's Bike and Roll to School Day, Walk SF's Walking School Bus Pilot Program, part of their Safe Routes to School program, and Somme Arts to support local art events. We have also signed a 5-year commitment to sponsor a South of Market Youth Collaborative, which provides summer programs for 175 at-risk children. We've engaged the Filipino community and supported their health symposium. Realtex is a proud sponsor of the Victoria Manuelo Draves VMD plaque, which had an unveiling ceremony this weekend. And we also support the Asian Pacific Islanders fundraising effort. In closing, I would like to thank the staff of the Planning Department for a positive recommendation on our project. Thank you.
Okay. We will open up to public comment. Reading some cards here. Rudy, Carlos Gascon, Rudy Ascension, Nastasia R., Carlos Duran, Rodel Rodis, Anya Aranya.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Rudy Ascension. I'm with the National Federation of Filipino American Associations, and I'm here to support Realtex and the 363 6th Street project. Realtex has proven themselves to be supportive of the community, and they have proven to be a valid community partners for the South of Market area. But one of the things that I really like about Realtex is that they supported our project against our war on obesity. And to us, that's very important because Filipinos have the highest rate of diabetes in the United States. And that's one of our pet project. I support their project strongly, and I ask that you also do the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Rudy Also. I personally like shadows. You know, it's been hot lately. I like shadows in the wind. But I'm here to support Realtex. They've been very supportive in the community. They're willing to support our organizations and 175 kids for the next 5 years to help fund all our field trips for all the kids, 175 kids. We've been having genuine relationship and conversations with these guys. It's been very, been very informative of what they're doing. There was 3 requests we made. We requested 3. They did 2 out of 3, which is good. And so we're here to support the project. And also, I know there's a lot of people here who has construction work they need done, and hopefully they can help them brothers out too. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Natasha Reintegrado. I work for the National Federation of Filipino American Associations. I'm the Vice Secretary, and I'm also the event coordinator for the Global Filipino Network under Mr. Arnold Pedregal. So I'm here to actually support this project under Realtex because I truly believe that it not only will be beneficial for the community because they're going to provide, I believe, 300 jobs that are going to be they're going to be using local laborers and unions that will help the local economy, but it would also help the middle class and also low-income families because we do really need it here in San Francisco. Also, we are happy that they are supporting the Filipino community. They've mentioned that they did support our health symposium that was done at the Philippine Consulate about the diabetes awareness, and also the Victoria Manalo Drapes, which is actually that's close to me because it's also not empowering the Filipino Americans out there, but also like empowering women. So I do truly support this project. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Come on up. Let me call a couple more names. Fred Naranjo, Kelly Groth, Heather Phillips, Misha Olivas, Dante Cornaz, and Dante Johnson.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Rodel Rodis, former member and president of the San Francisco Community College Board and the Public Utilities Commission. I'm here not to repeat what has already been said, except to also express my support that those who support the Filipino community in the South of Market, which badly needs support, like Realtex, will get the support of the Filipino community. So we endorse this project wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak in favor of this project located at 363 6th Street. My name is Carlos Duran, and I am a field representative for the Carpenters Union. I represent over 30,000 carpenters, of which approximately 3,000 belong to Carpenters Local 22 here in San Francisco. Some of those members are here behind me today. Carpenters Local 22 fully supports this project for the following reasons. The developer Realtex has made a commitment to hire a union general contractor to build this project. This will create good jobs that provide living wages, health, and pension benefits. This project also creates real opportunity for local San Francisco residents to enter the Carpenters Apprenticeship Program that can build a career for a lifetime that will continue after this project is complete. Furthermore, this project creates 104 multifamily units that addresses the crisis in affordable middle-class housing in our great city. In conclusion, I urge the Commission to raise the cumulative shadow limit to push this project forward, which will create opportunities to local San Francisco residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Heather Phillips, and I'm the Executive Director at City Crossroads, which is located on 6th Street, just the other side of Howard from this project. I'm also a community resident and part of the Friends of Victoria Manalo Draves and Gene Friends Rec Center group. Realtex has been engaged in this conversation for almost a year with the community, asking in anticipation of the shadow how they could be a benefit to the community looking at the long term. As Rudy said, they've supported the Soma Youth Collaborative, of which City Crossroads is a part, by supporting field trips for 175 kids for the next 5 summers. They've contributed funding to the Friends of the Park group through the Parks Alliance in order to fund youth sports at Gene's Friend. And so I really feel like they have reached out and tried to create partnership in the community and not just trying to bump up the shadow limit, but to really to look at mitigating those impacts with real things that address the needs that shadows on our parks create. So I would urge you just to look at the way that this project affects and the way that this developer has looked to benefit the community. Thank you.
Hello, my friends. My name is Misha Olivas. I am a resident of the South of Market. I'm a service provider and a parent, and I'm speaking today in support of the 363 6th Street project. Development is a huge issue in our community, but I wish that more folks would come to the table like these folks have and try to engage the community and find out what they can do to be a benefit. So one of the things that I really appreciate is the interest and willingness to commit long-term to a 5-year investment instead of just an investment up front when the project is being created, and that will provide services for young people for a few years to come, not just once the building is built. So we are confident that they will continue to be a member of the community and find ways to contribute past the construction of this project. And so I just wanted to share my strong support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for being here. My name is Kelly Groth, and I'm a member of both Walk San Francisco and the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition. And they submitted 2 letters of support that I wanted to read into the public record. The first is from the Bicycle Coalition. Thank you for your engagement with the community, the Vision Zero Coalition, and the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition as part of your outreach around this 363 6th Street project. As you know, these projects is located on a high injury corridor and on routes that are frequented by people walking and biking. We appreciate your focus on ensuring that current and future neighborhood residents have safe and attractive places to walk and bike. Many of the current members of the community have been asking for safety and connectivity improvements for years. In particular, we were excited to join you and your outreach team for a community safety walk around the project. Being able to walk the streets surrounding the proposed site location with members of the Vision Zero Coalition helped our coalition members discuss the importance of safety treatments with your Realtex team and share the vision they have for a safer 6th Street. This project is on a high injury corridor and located in communities of concern, so it is particularly critical that it addresses community safety concerns. We also very much appreciate your support and engagement with the Bessie Carmichael School for Bike and Roll to School Week. The kids had a great time, and this year's Bike and Roll to School Week was our most popular ever. Finally, we are pleased to see that both projects provide significant bicycle parking space for your residents and that they are careful to reduce traffic and congestion on important bike routes. Providing your residents with accessible and attractive bike parking helps the city of San Francisco meet its own share goals and makes it possible for residents to have safe and healthy transportation options. We appreciate the chance to work with you and look forward to continuing work together to improve safety and provide safe, convenient, and affordable transportation options in neighborhoods. Sincerely, Tyler Frisbee, Policy Director of the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition. The next letter is from Walk San Francisco. Thank you for Realtex's sponsorship of the Bessie Carmichael Walking School Bus and Wayfinding Program. Realtex's donation as a sponsor will help support the goals of a Safe Routes to School, an effort to both encourage children to walk to and from school, and create safer, more walkable environments at the school and in the surrounding neighborhood. Walk San Francisco is part of a growing movement to promote safe, sustainable, and healthy transportation. Walk SF members believe walking is a basic right. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Fred Naranjo. I own Scarborough Insurance Agency. I insure about 250 small businesses in the geographical area that we're looking at developing. I just want to applaud Realtech for really reaching out to the community. They're doing the walk and the talk. But more important than any of this, the politics and everything, ¿sabes qué es bien importante? Yo pienso que tenemos trabajo, ¿no? Puedes levantarte y diga a estas personas que necesitamos trabajo y quiero trabajo, por favor. So what I'm saying here, I want you to look at every one of these faces, brothers and sisters, and I know what it's like because I came here undocumented to this country, what jobs mean. The economy hasn't been that great. It's thriving today, and these people finally have jobs. And they just want to take care of their families. They just want basic rights. We know that this organization has reached out to the community, doing the right things. But you know what's more important to me? And some of you people on this board that have been in unions can understand, it's just taking care of the basic needs of their family. And I'm glad that you guys are here and standing up because we need jobs for you. And I think the economy is going to thrive and your families are going to thrive. And we're not going to be going through the stuff that we've been going through. So thank you for coming. And what's important to me is all those little small businesses there, South of Market, that I insure, that have been not doing well, but now they're starting to thrive. Now their businesses are becoming sustainable. You understand what it needs to make this happen. And I hope you will approve this project. And I think they are doing the right thing. I know they're doing the right thing. I know that some of the organizations, I don't know the people very well, but this is what I care about, those people right there. So have a nice day. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak. My name is Dante Johnson. I'm from San Francisco, 32, born and raised here. I'm a 7th period apprentice. I was born and raised in the Mission District and a few years in the Western Addition. I went to Galileo City College of San Francisco and decided I wanted to sell real estate. Then that took a turn for the worst. So I had no idea what I was going to do. I'm in an expensive city and, how the rent is here. So I joined the local 22 and became a carpenter and found it to be satisfying creating something from nothing. Like there's a blank space there. You drive by and there's a building there. So I grew up inner city kid with nothing as a metaphor, and now I have a career. So I also created something from nothing within myself. So I just would like to push this project to give more people like me the opportunity to create something from nothing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Rec and Park Commission. My name is Joel Koppel. I work for the San Francisco Electrical Contractors Association and IBEW Local 6 Electricians Union. I'm also here speaking for the sheet metal workers, Local 104, the plumbers, Local 38, and the sprinkler fitters, 483. I am a San Francisco resident from here, grew up here, live right next to Golden Gate Park, so I appreciate what the Rec and Park Commission does. I had a letter, forgive me, it was just addressed to Planning President Fong, but I'd like to submit it now while everyone's here so we can all be looking at the same piece of paper. It's great to see there's a large presence here of carpenters. It's great to see that there's a commitment from the developer to work with the carpenters. I reached out to the developer as soon as I possibly could to work out a deal to also be here speaking in favor of the project on the same accord. That hasn't happened. I want to be really discreet about this. I know this is a very small town. I'm not here to burn any bridges and, disrupt anything out in the future. But as far as our local 32 contractors, we have 32, local contractors, and all of our 974 electricians that live in San Francisco. We don't have a commitment from the developer on this project. So we look at this as, developer versus community, developer benefits versus community benefits. And should we make deals with part of the community or all of the community? We'd like to have a commitment from the developer, just like the carpenters would. I'm sure we're not asking too much. We're familiar with the scenario and the setting here, where we've been here with the same groups, United Players, and this neighborhood group speaking in favor of 5M. Last week we were here for 1532 Harrison with Bill Dink, and we had commitments from that developer, and all those other trades were here in support of the project. So again, I'm not that the whole commission is going to revolve around us, but for my members and my contractors, we unfortunately are opposing this project.
Okay, Henry Karnowitz. Any other public comment in addition to Henry?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Henry Karnowitz, President of the South of Market Business Association. I think this is really an excellent project, particularly when we look at small business. South of Market for a long time has been a sort of a place for a lot of warehouses and workshops and so forth. And slowly those workshops closed up, they moved away, and so there was a lot of work that was lost. And also small business was lost. So now with First Foot, we're going to have more people coming in, and we're having more people living in the area. We're going to have more small businesses that will be successful and will thrive. So we really heavily endorse this and support this project, and I hope you will do so likewise. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Alice Rogers from 10 South Park, and I'm here to address item 1D, not dealing with the shadow issue, but rather the ground floor design of the project as proposed. I've written you, I am not opposed to this project being built. I think it will be an asset to the community. I'm very thankful for the outreach that they've done. But the ground floor design of this project clearly is in violation and disregards your very own ground floor residential planning guidelines, which we were told have the force of law, even though they happen to not be clearly spelled out at this moment in the planning code. So I would respectfully request that you continue this item and ask for a ground floor redesign. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
I'm reading a letter on behalf of Jess Young, who's from the Soma Arts Interim Executive Director. She's sorry that she couldn't make it today, but wanted to submit this letter to be on record. Thank you, Commissioners. We want to thank Realtex for their engagement with the community and with community-focused organizations like Soma Arts Cultural Center and the SF Bike Coalition as a part of their outreach around the developments at 1335 Folsom Street and 3636 Street. We have been consistently impressed with how engaged and interested Realtex has been in becoming the part of the social fabric of the neighborhood. Their willingness to participate in Soma Arts programming and learn about the work of the historically significant neighborhood arts and cultural spaces, such as Soma Arts, has made a lasting impression. As an organization whose constituencies are in need of affordable housing, we are pleased by their commitment to include 12% of their units as affordable housing on site and as a prospect of new homes created within walking distance of Soma Arts. We look forward to having their project in our neighborhood and welcoming future residents of these neighborhoods to join Soma Arts in engaging the power of the arts to provoke just and fair inclusion, cultural respect, and civic participation. Thank you.
Okay, is there any additional public comment? Okay, not seeing any, public comment is closed. And opening up to commissioners, Commissioner Antonini.
Yeah, we're before us first on our agenda, I believe, is the consideration of the shadow and whether to raise the cumulative limit. And as has been presented, the impact of this is very small, 0.027% of the available amount of shadow or over the entire year, and it only affects 20 out of 365 days with a duration of 5 to 22 minutes. And in all cases, apparently, the shadow is done well before the opening of the park, and most of the shadow falls on an area that is the entryway to the park. And there has been some talk, although it hasn't been finalized yet, about a redesign of the structures, which might end up putting structures on the area where the shadow is falling. But I think given the benefits that the project brings and the fact that the impact is negligible and unless the hours are changed has no effect on anybody inhabiting the park, I would be in favor of raising the cumulative limit to an amount that would allow this small increment to be allowed, and therefore we could thereafter choose to allot this increase to this particular project.
Okay, Commissioner Wu.
Thank you. So my first question is to staff. Rec Park staff outlined a number of projects that are going to be coming forward. I don't know, can you give us a framework for how to think about the fact that, there will be 3 or 4 projects in a row coming asking for an increase on what was originally a 0% budget allowance?
So the other projects that are currently in the pipeline, the 345 6th Street and the 908 Folsom, we haven't completed our review. In both cases, the environmental review is still active, and the department hasn't finished their commentary on the proposed design. So while we provided an initial framework for the massing relative to the cumulative study, just so that the commissioners are aware in terms of the potential impact on the shadow, there's not enough information available to basically provide additional information to the commission to consider. So.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just follow up on that, Rich, correct me if I'm wrong. The analysis that was shown by Rec Park staff was, I think it's fair to say, it's kind of the worst case scenario, right?
Correct.
I mean, as the projects move forward, we typically work with the project sponsors to reduce the shadow as the form of the building is further refined. So we wanted to give you kind of a worst case scenario in terms of the impact.
So like I know in the case of the 345 6th Street, which was addressed with a cumulative study with 363, I think they used the massing as proposed by the sponsor, which isn't necessarily the massing that is supported by the department or future commission.
Okay, thank you. So to that point, then, if I could ask the developer or the architect, what would it take to design out the shadow?
Alexis Pelosi again. So that's something that the project sponsor hasn't spent a lot of time looking at this point, but our understanding is that given the sun access plane of the sun, when it hits the building, it hits the building pretty square on, and Adam Noble is here and can talk a little bit about it as well. And so it captures a large mass of the building, and so preliminary looks at it indicate that it would take off probably 2 or 3 stores of the building, which would result in a decrease in, how many units? A significant portion of those units, because it's not only cutting off the top of the building, but then also the core. So then it would impact probably about 2 to 3 floors.
So is it across the entire top 2 floors that cast the shadow, or is it a corner of the building?
It's not a corner of the building. It's, let me see if I can find an image. So the way that the building fronts along 6th Street, the massing that's along 6th Street sort of over in that big corner, but the way the building is designed with the setback with the rear yard, the problem is that the core goes all the way up to the roof, obviously, and provides access to all of those floors. So when you cut it off to take off those top floors, you're also cutting off the core of the building and therefore cannot have the units up at that level. And so as a result, if there were to be no shadow impact on the park, it would be a completely redesigned project. It would look very different, have a different sort of layout and configuration configuration. It isn't as simple as just, say, cutting off a corner of the building.
Okay, thank you. I say this every time we're here at these hearings. The 89 memo, it talks about putting a certain number of parks on the zero cumulative limit list. Those are parks that were less than 2 acres and were already shadowed by 20% or more. I take that seriously, and so it's hard when you don't have any options in front of you that are about a shadow versus non-shadow park.
Commissioner Hillis.
So thank you for the presentation. I think this is similar to the project we had when we met a while ago with 5M, and that the shadow's fairly minimal in areas of the park that are somewhat ancillary in during hours that the park's not open, which I think is significant and something that we should take into consideration. There's always this balance of kind of allowing for new development and balancing that with the impacts. But I think the impacts are significantly low enough here that kind of the project outweighs them. But a couple of questions. First, for planning staff, when we did Transbay, we kind of looked at the shadow impact of that project on parks. Did we do that when we did the East SOMA, Eastern Neighborhoods Plan, and kind of increase shadow limits in envelopes when we did that? Or was that something kind of new to Transbay?
I think the short answer, Commissioner, is that it was relatively new to Transbay because we knew when you did Transbay, you were looking at the specific projects and heights that we knew about. The difference is that in Eastern Neighborhoods, we didn't know because it was, first of all, a much bigger area. And second of all, it was more speculative. We didn't know where all the projects were that were going to be proposed in that area. So it was less specific, if you will, than Transbay.
Got it. Okay. I mean, I think it's a useful exercise to do because I think we run into this in Market Octavia too, where we built Hayes Green but anticipated development around it, yet didn't kind of increase the shadow envelopes for that. So we're kind of talking out of both sides. So, I mean, I appreciate that we did it for Transbay and not for this. And then second, for Rec Park, why is Gene Friend limited hours, whereas Manalo Draves Park, it's open, dusk to dawn? Just interested in that.
Mike on.
Commissioner Phil Ginsburg. I think actually the hours, I'm not 100% certain of this as I sit here and respond, but I think the hours are actually quite similar. They're both gated. They were both designed with gated properties, and so they are closed. They essentially both function from dusk to dawn. Gene Friend is more of an active recreation site, and we like to actually have people in the building to program the space, which is a little different than the utility at VMD, where we welcome people to use the park, and it may not actually be programmed, or we might not have people on site.
Okay, thank you. And then just finally, I think the mitigations proposed were great. It sounded like there was a lot of work with the community. I mean, in the future, and I think we did this on 5M too, it'd be great to formalize those and somehow, I mean, it seems like they were done on the developers initiative with community members, but it'd be good in the future. I support them to kind of make those more part of the approval process and have some kind of more formal mitigation for shadow impact. But I think what's been proposed is appropriate, and I'm glad kind of they were brought here and talked about in a public forum. Thank you.
Commissioner Richards.
The basis for determining whether the shadow is adverse or not, as we had with 5M, is really hanging its hat on the hours of operation of the park. Here we have a district that has a real paucity of parks and open space per resident, I think probably the lowest of all the supervisor districts. And we're not actually, to the best of my knowledge, and maybe Mr. Ginsburg can help me here, we're not really increasing the number of parks in District 6. So the question I have is, at some point in the future, would we ever try to increase the hours of operation that would actually include the time where the shadow is hitting the park? Do we have any rec centers anywhere in the city that open up before work or before school, say 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and do we have any plans actually to look at this?
So I'll answer both parts of your question. We actually are looking very seriously at acquiring new open space in District 6 and working with the Open Space Task Force there, and have identified, and the Planning Department have identified actually a couple of possibilities. We're well aware of the fact that the character of that neighborhood has changed and is much more residential, and that open space is particularly acute and important. I want to, before I get to the last part of your question, again underscore the difference between a recreation center and a park. And Gene Friend is fundamentally a recreation center, and it's a space that needs to be actively programmed. In an ideal world, we would operate all of our facilities 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Those are not the financial realities that we have. With that said, as we've gone through the feasibility process and looking at Gene Friend, and our goal is, in recognition of the points that you raised, to expand programming at Gene Friend and actually increase space at Gene Friend, I think that the hours of operation are certainly on the table.
Okay. I think the other, overall here, we're looking at two public policy objectives. One is quality of open space and a zero shadow impact park with the need for housing and affordable housing. I also do support Commissioner Hillis's ask that we actually formalize the mitigations in the future on these kind of shadow impacts.
Commissioner Lowe.
Most of my questions were taken by Commissioner Wu and Commissioner Richards, but I do have a question for Stacy. Is what is the future plans for redevelopment of the Gene Friend Rec Center? Do any of those plans include active play areas, integration of the sunlight with the rec center on any of those plans?
So the plans are still in formation. We have 4 different options. I do have images of them with me if you want to see them. The end goal will likely be something where the recreation center will be along 6th Street because it's the most active part of the park, and so that's where we want to bring people into the park. It is going to have a play area, but the play area will likely be in a similar location to where it is today, somewhere on the Harriet Street side where it's more protected from the main street. That corner where this new shadow will be placed is likely to be part of the park, part of the recreation center. It may have a garden on top, so there may be rooftop access with either exercise equipment or green space.
So, and Commissioner, let me kind of underscore the feasibility study that we did was, frankly, it was largely a philanthropic gift, and so we're very early in our planning and design stage. The different models based on, sort of, do we renovate the existing site, do we knock the whole thing down and start over, or do we do someplace in between? That was the feasibility study, and gave us some economic ranges where we don't have actually, we're still working on a funding strategy for those. So I think that there is plenty of an opportunity remaining in a design process. We don't have an approved concept design. We haven't completed community planning. This was just showing us what a range of options for what a project at Gene Friend could reveal. So we actually have flexibility to design to maximize sunlight.
But just a follow-up question to that. What is the developer's community benefit package as it relates to the parks?
What is the developer's community development package as it relates to the park? This is this particular developer as they made their presentation. Stacy, if you go ahead, you can take that.
Sure. They provided $10,000 to the Gene Friend Rec Center for youth programming. That's what they were discussing with the 175 children over 5 years for programming. And then they're also sponsoring a movie night at VMD. And they provided a plaque. They worked with the Filipino community to formalize a plaque on VMD. I think before it was sort of a wooden temporary sign that now is a bronze sign that explains who Victoria Manolo Drives is.
Okay. Commissioner Antonini.
Yeah, I would assume that staff will work with any of the future projects that might cast a shadow on Gene Friend Park to, as they have in this case, to minimize or eliminate that or make it as non-significant as possible. So that is something for the future. It doesn't have to do with our approvals today, but I am certain that will continue to happen. Also, I can attest to the fact that recreational areas on the west side of the city have hours too, and gates are closed and open for security reasons, and that makes a lot of sense because they're programmed for active recreational uses, and so, it's important to keep them secured during certain hours, so I would expect this is the same thing that applies to Gene Friend. And I'm going to move to, for the Planning Commission to raise the allowable cumulative shadow limit on Gene Friend Recreation Center by the appropriate amount. I'll take direction from staff as to what we should spell out on that.
Second.
I think it's 0.02788%.
Correct. Yeah, it's in the draft motions provided to the commission.
In the draft motion.
Okay, Commissioner Richards.
Just one other follow-on question for Mr. Ginsburg. Are there any, understanding the difference between a park and a rec center, are there any rec centers in the city now and prior that have been open at 7 a.m., to the best of your knowledge?
I think a lot of our aquatic centers are actually open early because we catch swimming before, and sometimes I think on occasion we've had opened up a basketball court early. We're not really currently, we try to sort of program our facilities when we think we're going to get the most amount of use. Your points are really well taken, and part of it depends on what the programmatic elements of the center are, and we would very much sort of support and encourage more programs inside the building. The key thing about Gene Friend is this is fundamentally a building, a structure. There is outdoor space, and the outdoor space is important, but it is fundamentally, the expansion that we're talking about is increasing indoor space, indoor programmatic space.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harrison.
If this is the appropriate time, I'd like to make the motion.
You can.
And,
right.
Yeah. Why don't we hear from
You
Commissioner
can do that. We
Bonilla?
can call the question
Okay.
separately, right?
Yes. I'd like to ask a question about the 12 units, housing units that will be made available for rent, and if we have any idea of what the average rent costs would be for that, and how those units will be accessed.
The BMR units that will be provided will follow our established program, which is guided by the Mayor's Office of Housing. And I think for rental units, they're required to be at 55% of the AMI, which is right now around 70,000, I think, somewhere in that range. So 55% of that.
Less than that.
So it's less than that. So.
And there, but Commissioner, just so you know, there's a whole manual and a policy that is established by the Mayor's Office of Housing on these units that the Planning Commission actually reviews every year. And the units are required to be scattered through the building. Okay. So they can't just be like on one floor on the lower levels or whatever.
So we will be following protocols on that. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McDonald.
I know we're trying to get to call the question, so I'll be brief. It seems to me as we're considering whether or not to raise the ceiling, that the basis for it can and should be, certainly I think stating the obvious, can and should be on the impact on the open space. It feels like a slippery slope when we begin to add to the consideration how good the company is. And I applaud Realtex for the amazing commitment that has at least been described as others have done as well. So it's just a comment that it makes me uncomfortable because that could be a very slippery slope. As the company gets better in the ways that we deem good, then that potentially, forgive me, but casts a shadow over the question of, does the shadow have impact on the space? And I think the data illustrates that it has minimal impact on the space, and that's really the point of the question in my mind.
Good. Thank you for that clarity. Commissioner Lowe.
Just to tie off of my colleague's comments, I also want to make sure that this doesn't set a precedent for future projects that are coming before us. We don't want another developer to come in to us and say, I made a $10,000 donation to Parks Alliance. Let me cast more shadow on a zero-tolerance park.
Okay, I believe there is a motion and a second from the Planning Commission and a motion and a second from Rec and Park.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second.
Yes, second.
Shall we call the question then?
Please.
Then Commissioners, then Planning Commission on that motion to raise the cumulative shadow limit for Gene Friend Recreation Center. Commissioner Antonini.
Aye.
Commissioner Hillis.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Richards.
Aye.
Commissioner Wu.
No.
And Commission President Fong.
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes 5-1 with Commissioner Wu voting against.
And the Recreation and Park Commission, Commissioner McDonald.
Aye.
Commissioner Bonilla.
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison.
Aye.
Commissioner Lowe.
Aye.
And Commissioner Buell.
Aye.
And that motion passes. So we are now on item 1B, which is a Recreation and Park Commission action only, and that's a discussion and possible action by the Recreation and Park Commission to adopt a resolution to recommend to the Planning Commission that the new shadow cast on Gene Friend Rec Center by the proposed project at 3636 Street will not be adverse to the use of the park as required by Planning Code Section 295, the Sunlight Ordinance. Commissioners, do we have a motion or questions?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner McDonald.
Aye.
Commissioner Bonilla.
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison.
Aye.
Commissioner Lowe.
Aye.
And Commissioner Buell.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. That item passes. And Commissioner Buell, would you like to adjourn now?
I'd love to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn the Rec and Park Commission?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Why don't we give them a minute to clear this?
Very helpful.
Just for the benefit of the public, the Recreation and Park Commission has adjourned and will be leaving the chambers. The Planning Commission will remain in session to discuss the rest of the entitlements of the project.
Commissioners, thank you.
Enjoy the rodeo.
Question.
Why don't we wait? We're going to have a break. Scatter.
Commissioners, shall we proceed?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioners. Then you have remaining items 1C and 1D for the adoption of findings in the large project authorization. You may call those questions separately or together.
Commissioner Antonini.
Yeah, I'm in favor, but I just wanted to ask on the shadow issue. The shadows are effective 1 hour after sunrise and 1 hour before sunset. So it seems like, I'm not sure, this time of the year, the sun's been getting up a little later each day. And I'm wondering if there, even though we're considering there must obviously be sun during those times of the day that are under consideration, but it looks like many times of the year the sun is barely risen by the time we're considering. I just thought I'd make that point. Obviously, there must be some sunlight there to analyze a shadow, but it's probably pretty minimal. And I am in favor, based upon what's been presented before us, to go ahead and support the regarding the use of the shadow allotment by this particular project, and I would make a motion to support that, to allow that to happen.
Commissioner Antonini, the commissions have jointly acted on raising the cumulative shadow. What is before?
This is for adoption of findings.
Adoption of findings as well as the large project authorization?
Well, no, we're doing those together.
Okay, just the adoption of findings.
I didn't know we had to do another. I thought we did one to raise the limit, then we hit a separate one to allot that limit to this particular project.
Correct. So that's if the shadow is adverse to the use of the park, is the finding that the Planning Commission needs to make now. So.
Yeah, so that's actually what I am making the motion on, just
Understood.
that one segment of it.
Understood.
If we want to do them separately, because they're two separate questions.
They are.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Richards?
I'll save my comments for the LPA.
Okay. And Commissioner Hillis?
we're still on shadow, so I'll.
Yeah, we're just going to do the findings first and then, yeah.
Okay. Commissioners, then on that motion to adopt findings, Commissioner Antonini.
Aye.
Commissioner Hillis.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Richards.
Aye.
Commissioner Wu.
No.
And Commission President Fong.
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes 5-1 with Commissioner Wu voting against.
Commissioner Richards.
Now we're on to the actual project itself. I think a project is appropriate here. I appreciate the outreach, the community benefits that the developer has given for the arts, the nonprofits. It provides critical housing, on-site BMR, all good stuff. However, I am troubled by, and we are stewards of the planning code, and I'm troubled by what we've been talking about in terms of this allotment of the 5 feet. And I'd love to hear how the process, I see here with the UDAT team, it looks apparent to me at one point it recommended cutting a floor off to keep the project within the intent of the code. Can you talk to me about the journey that you made to ask us for recommend it?
Sure. So, as you know, as part of the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan, we introduced, or the commission and the board introduced, the kind of 5-foot bumps within the code. So, for example, previously, within this area, we only had a 80-foot height limit, and Eastern Neighborhoods included like an 85-foot height limit, which would accommodate ground floor uses, particularly non-residential ground floor uses. And so, under the code, ground floor uses have to have, in this zoning district, non-residential uses, a 14-foot floor to ceiling, floor to floor height. So in this case, the developer meets that intent of the code by providing for an 18-foot floor to ceiling height for the commercial space at the ground floor level. What it lent itself to for the remainder of the project is that by providing for a smaller floor plate, basically a smaller floor to ceiling height, they were able to accommodate an additional floor of residential use on the other half of the building. So typically in an 85-foot height limit, you would have a 14-foot ground floor, right, if it was a non-residential ground floor, and then 7 floors above of residential use. And so in this case, we have 9 floors total within an 85-foot height limit.
So do you think this meets the intent of the planning code?
Correct. Okay. So we analyzed the kind of pinch in the floor plate as compared to what it is, and didn't find it to be adverse to the use of the.
I guess I have a question for the project sponsor. Thank you. Thank you. We had 1532 Harrison last week, and one of the reasons why I came out actively supporting it was actually a couple of reasons. One was they went down 5 feet, and all of their floors were 10 feet. Additionally, they had a superior design where you actually could see through the building in 2 different places. I understand. I mean, not to make any judgment on the architect here. We have a completely different project with pinched floors and a design that is good but not superior. Question I have is, have you thought about going down 5 feet like 1532 Harrison and creating the 10-foot floor-to-ceiling heights for each residential unit?
Yes, we actually have. The reason for not doing that in this particular case is the project is located within a flood zone. So we've worked very closely with DPW, Public Works, also our civil engineer. The building actually has to be raised 2 feet on the frontage right at the corner of Clara and 6th Street. So there's a lot of work that's went into how the building relates to that issue that we encountered, and so kind of going to an inset unit we felt that presented a lot of issues.
Okay, thank you. I guess one other question for staff. The portion that is residential is not zoned commercial, so it wasn't like the developer chose, I want to put 2 units here where we would have a commercial space allowed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so in this case, this zoning district doesn't, or in this particular site, doesn't have any required ground floor commercial uses. So it's optional on their part whether or not they provide a commercial space or not.
In your opinion, a commercial space where fronting Clara Street and the other place where we have the 2 units on the bottom, what would you think about that?
I would say, given probably the character of 6th Street, we'd probably recommend focusing the commercial towards 6th Street.
And your south frontage of 6th Street is commercial?
Correct.
Okay. Thank
so
you.
they basically have their retail space on the corner of Clara and 6th Street. So it does have some frontage onto Clara, and then they have the walk-up dwelling units, so on Clara Street, basically, for the right.
Thanks.
Commissioner Hillis.
Just a couple of questions along those lines, because it is interesting. We had 1532 Harrison, which kind of did similar things, and we heard kind of similar feedback about kind of getting an additional floor within the height limit, which I think on its face is good, right? We're adding more housing. It's kind of, is the housing well designed, and is it appropriate? So can you just clarify the Florida height, that height?
So
what is that for
the
these?
floor to ceiling height as proposed is 8 feet 5 inches, or 8 feet 6? 8 feet 6 inches.
That's the livable area.
Correct. So from where basically the level of the carpet is up to where the ceiling would hit.
And what's the code minimum for that?
Is 7 per DBI. 7 feet is what the DBI would allow.
Okay. And what's the range we typically see in projects?
Typically, we'll accommodate like a floor to ceiling height of 10 feet, knowing that there's a floor slab of about typically a foot, so it's typically around 9 feet from floor to ceiling.
Okay.
So on average.
So there's about 6 inches, lower than average, but still allowable on the code. And I guess getting to this, there's this 5-foot bump issue in Market Octavia. I'm not sure if it's like in Balboa Park plan either.
I think a big misnomer that's out there is that there's a 5-foot bump. The zoning district is 85 feet. So any development would be allowed to build up to 85 feet, no matter what. So there's no bonus basically beyond the 85-foot level. It's just in 2008 when they rezoned the site, they basically accommodated for this 5-foot level, basically as an increase in our zoning districts, in our height districts, which were to help accommodate for more gracious ground floor spaces.
Right.
If you were choosing to do, for example, PDR or retail space on the ground floor level.
Right. Okay. But is the language the same in those other plan areas than it is in eastern neighborhoods, or is there?
As far as I know, I'm fairly certain Market Octavia is similar to eastern neighborhoods. So they're in our NC corridors. And
yeah, if I may, in the NC corridors, that sort of height is a quid pro quo, that if you increase, say, the commercial area by 2 feet, and it's a 50-foot height limit, you get a 52-foot height for the building.
Okay.
And one other thing I wanted to add, historically, this area was RSD, and there was a split height limit of 40/85X to allow conditional use for a higher height limit. So this 85-foot has been in place for a long time there.
Okay. How tall does a building have to be in order to take advantage of kind of being able to do an extra floor? Like, could a 65-foot height building take advantage of is there enough room with the same floor to ceiling heights to get 7 floors in there? We saw in Harrison, they went down actually on a 65-foot. Could you do the same thing
in theory, they could. I know that in talking with the development team, they're also using a different construction model that's allowing them to keep their, correct? That's allowing them to keep their slab smaller than what is typical, and probably given the height of the overall, it's different, because depending on the height is a different range of construction that's basically allowed on each project.
Yeah. Okay. I'm supportive. I think it's a creative way, just like what we saw on Harrison Street. You may prefer or not the Harrison Street project, but there's some issues of going down also. I think we have the issue of having shorter floor to ceiling heights here, but I think it's an interesting way to get more housing and actually stay within the height limit. So I'm supportive. I think maybe in the future, though, we should perhaps take a look at kind of how the Market Octavia plan works and how this one does, and clarify that language in the intent. But I think ultimately it's good to get an extra livable floor of housing and all that comes with it, fees and affordable housing. So I'm supportive.
Commissioner Antonini.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments and a question. First of all, I would urge project sponsor, should this be approved, which I'm very supportive of, to continue to work as the project moves forward to outreach to all parts of the community as far as you know, how it's being built and who's going to build it and everything. It's not, of course, a condition, but it certainly is something that I would like to see the project sponsor to do, as per some earlier conversation. In terms of the height, it's very clear that they have the 18-foot retail, which I've had some letters that have questioned that, but they satisfy all points as far as the height, and it's allowed, and they have more than enough on the ground floor retail. The other question that was raised, it's a little confusing, it was that the ground floor entries to the ground floor units have to be 3 to 5 feet above grade. Now, I'm hearing two different things. First of all, I think you, project sponsor, said they had to raise the whole thing 2 feet to start with at Clara and 6th. And then I understand there is a 2-foot raise to the beginning of the porch that will address the units, and also I think that's an 8-foot porch. So maybe Mr. Sucre could talk about that, because I think that more than satisfies it with a really broad porch.
Correct. So in looking at this with our urban design team, basically the ground floor residential design guidelines provide guidelines for what is typical and what we would often ask an architect to consider when developing walk-up units basically at the street. But it's not a strict formula in terms of options, like in terms of how you basically accommodate the effect that we're looking for. So in this case, since the project sponsor is only raising a couple feet off of the sidewalk grade, having a deeper courtyard was supported by our design team and our design professionals, because it still allows for enough activity basically at the street, and it also allows for privacy and usage of the private terraces that are basically fronting directly onto the street. So basically, the higher you go, the shallower you can basically make that open space. The lower to the ground you have, the deeper that you want it to go, basically to make sure that you accommodate for livability and privacy as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I certainly support that, because I think of situations involving my own house, and other houses would have fairly broad porches. Seems very gracious, but if we had just the 2 steps and we're coming right up to the door, then it would seem less so. So I think the two figure into each other, and I think it's a good compromise.
Commissioner Hillis. I'm sorry. Commissioner Wu.
Okay, so I just want to ask a couple questions. I'm looking at the plan of the ground floor, and so there's a commercial space, a lobby, and a community room. So are all of those at the, I think it was either 14 or 18 foot?
Correct. So all of the frontage, basically all of the spaces that front onto 6th Street, the lobby, the community room, and the retail all have the 18-foot floor-to-ceiling height.
Okay. And then on the drawing, it also says that the community room, it says possible PG&E transformer room. Is it in the conditions of approval that it has to be a community room?
Correct, it does. So if they do have to accommodate a transformer room, obviously the community room would likely be reduced in size, and that ends up being a PG&E requirement that they have to have the room on a public street if they can't have basically the transformer vault put into the sidewalk.
So it would likely be a corner of the room.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Hillis.
So I would move to approve item 1D, the large project authorization.
Second.
Commissioners, there is a motion that has been seconded to approve the large project authorization. On that motion, Commissioner Antonini.
Aye.
Commissioner Hillis.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Richards.
No.
Commissioner Wu.
No.
And Commission President Fong.
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes 4-2 with Commissioners Richards and Wu voting against. Commissioners, that was the last item on this agenda, and I do apologize. I did not foresee us ending this so quickly. Our next hearing cannot start before 3 p.m., so we'll have an extended break.
Okay, so we will take a little longer lunch break and reconvene here at a little before 3. Okay.